If you needed any more reason to believe we are in a housing crisis, take a look at this. A Sydney landlord has advertised an apartment listing in the CBD offering this: a share room with 3 single mattresses on the floor, perfect for, quote, 3 boys at just the bargain basement price of $190 a week each. The advertisement claims the apartment is fully furnished, but the landlord has now been accused of exploiting desperate renters. For their take, let's bring in broadcaster Luke Bona and columnist Susie O'Brien. Good morning. Luke, a single mattress on the floor. Is this the reality of the crisis we are in?
Yeah, it's appalling, isn't it? And it's clear exploitation. And the problem is, how do you police this? Do you regulate rents? Do you regulate square foot and how many mattresses or how many beds are allowed in one room? And, you know, there'll be people out there, investors, saying, well, hang on, I don't want my rent to be regulated. It's a supply and demand. And sorry, that's the way it is. You remember this, Nat? It was about 9 years ago. There was an apartment block in the centre of Sydney, and there were 6 in a room that big. There were 3 bunks. And there was 6 living in it, and there was outrage then, but nothing's been done. And while you've got a massive housing shortage, this sort of thing is going to go on. And once again, Susie, I'm keen to hear what you think. The investors, the people of these rental properties will say, well, it's supply and demand, it's the free market. We don't live in, communist China. If these people are willing to spend $190 to sleep on a mattress on the floor, well, it's not my fault. And
Susie, they are. Apparently, there's a second room with 3 mattresses like this, and there's only 1 spot left, Susie.
Well, apparently this room in particular has already been taken, so we can rail against the injustice of it, but obviously someone thought it was a good deal. I mean, what's going to happen when the rent goes up? Is there going to be 6 in the room top and tailing? I mean, it really is just disgraceful. And this kind of stuff has been happening for years. At the moment, we've got a Melbourne house that was advertised as family-friendly accommodation. You know what it was? It was a garage space in the middle of the city. I mean, in Melbourne, we've been building apartments without even living room windows. No natural light at all. So this is just such a reminder of just what is happening everywhere.
Yep, that our leaders need to get onto and try and solve this.
I'm surprised they haven't put bunks in there to get 6 people in. I'm surprised. I shouldn't have said it. But it happens.
But it's a massive, very serious problem, isn't it? Moving on, a Victorian woman who is blind is taking Uber to the federal court over claims the company repeatedly refused to let her ride because she has a guide dog. She says drivers, when they learn she has a guide dog, they either cancel or they tell her to book the more expensive Uber pet service instead. Her case spans 32 individual incidents over the span of 20 months. Luke, what do you think? So 32 cancellations are telling her to book the more expensive service.
Well, I tell you the feedback I get from my listeners around the country about Uber, and that is it's very hard to make them accountable, and it's almost impossible to get through to someone to make a complaint and talk about it. I think this is illegal. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but this is a guide dog. This isn't a dog that's coming along for a pleasure ride. This person needs this dog, and of course, it should be in a taxi, it should be in an Uber, it should be in a bus or a tram. There shouldn't be any question about it. So if Uber's breaking the law, they need to be jumped on. Once again, apparently it's very, very hard to get through to Uber head office and someone who's in charge. They're just not accountable, and they should be.
And Susie, it's hard to mediate too because they've tried mediation with Uber and that has broken down. That's why it's going to court. What needs to happen here?
Yeah, I mean, this is disgraceful. I mean, it shouldn't be easier to get an Uber if you're blind drunk than if you're blind. I mean, all people with disabilities who have no option but to use this kind of transport deserve to be treated with respect. And it's not just a failure of companies like Uber who are making billions of dollars profit off all of us, but it's also a failure of the regulators. How has this been allowed to continue for so long? And to get to the point where nothing is done, so it ends up in court. And, you know, it's very much the same as what all the people who are in wheelchairs have been relying on maxi cabs that get cancelled the last minute because a cabbie gets a fare to the airport instead. So this sort of stuff is, disgraceful. It's about the regulation. Get these companies in line because they are making big bucks.
Absolutely. And we all welcomed Uber. And remember, they operated illegally for a long time, and a lot of really good taxi people lost their life savings and their plates. They've got to be made accountable.
If you're from Uber, I'd like to know why you are fighting this. It just seems ridiculous, doesn't it? That they're actually taking this blind woman to the federal court. Thank you.